I'm running your back. I got to run your background.
Yeah, you got to run the background.
And I'm telling you, you got a job. I'm telling you, there's no age limit, no age restriction. As long as you can pass the BLET and the physical exam, bro, you good.
Street fights. All right, so Q&A. All right. So if anybody has any questions for Diesel before we get off of the stream, put them up in the comment section. I want to ask you a question. What has changed from being an officer to being the chief? Like, what has changed that you would have never in a million years thought would be different?
Me being the chief.
Yeah.
But the way I view law enforcement has changed tremendously within this last 2 years, almost 3 years. Like, it has changed so much within this last 2 years. I didn't realize how political any position in law enforcement was when it comes to running a department, right? So I thought being a sheriff was a very, very political job, when it came down to it, because they have to get voted in, right? The sheriff has to get voted in. Police chief, they get appointed, but the politics are just ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. And the people that really don't know what law enforcement is are the politicians.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to navigate that when you hear them say certain things out on the streets and then they come back behind closed doors and you hear exactly what they really think.
Right.
So I think my whole outlook on law enforcement as a whole has changed, because I not only have to look out for myself, my officers, I have to look out for the police department and the town. Right. So I have to make sure everything is good with how we operate. And that's why I go back and say, like, everybody has a boss. Policies are made for the dumbest ass you got on your department. So
yeah.
If the policy is there, it's because somebody done did something to get it there, right? And the only thing that I've always been worried about, even before I became the chief, was I hope they're not changing policy because of something I did. And that's the main thing that you want to be, concerned about when it comes down to it. If they're changing policy or they're changing rules or something, just make sure it's not because of something you did.
Okay. Let me ask you this. How do security guards, and if police officers are watching this, police officers, but people in general, how do people in general, primarily security guards, find motivation for 2024?
Wow.
It's been a rough couple of years. We've had COVID. We've had a very, tumultuous couple of years with, just dynamics between races and immigration. And we've got a couple of wars, inflation is through the roof. It's a difficult time for people. So as somebody who's a little bit older and more mature and now in a leadership position, how do you, what do you say to people in order to, for them to find the motivation to keep pushing and trying to succeed in 2024?
Man, that's a hard question, man. That's just a hard question to answer, because, I tell my guys, even though I can't pay you the most, right? You're at a department that's not going to try to get your career, right? They're not going to throw you under the bus or anything like that. But to keep your motivation, or to find your motivation, man, I just tell myself, just stay on the plan. Stay on the plan, regardless of what happens. You know what you're going for. You know what your goals are. Stick to it and just keep going. Like, don't worry about what everything else that's going on that might affect you. Just don't let it affect you. Try your hardest not to let it affect you and just keep going.
Okay. All right. So we got a question coming in from Rizzy Lyricist. Have you ever witnessed a security guard getting attacked? If so, how did it play out?
Yeah, I've seen it a couple times, man. Being a security officer and a police officer, I've seen it a couple times, and it goes both ways. You have, my favorite story of being a security officer is, and I know you've seen it. You got that one security. So I was working with a company and we worked check cashing places.
Okay.
We had this one security officer. Ain't nobody gonna come up here and rob. I swear I'm gonna shoot him between the eyes. This and that. Walked around with a cane, and he was the baddest man you could find.
Right. Shaft.
And also the only one that got robbed.
Right.
Right. So like, you see, I mean, you see it all the time. I've seen security officers whoop some butt. I've seen officers get their butt whooped. Same thing with police officers. Like I've seen it, and it all comes down to training. It all comes down to training and confidence, right?
Yeah.
A lot of problems that come from any kind of encounter you have with somebody, be it physical or non-physical, is confidence.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have the confidence to be able to either talk your way or fight your way out, you're in a losing battle. Right. So I mean that's what it comes down to a lot.
But can people learn confidence, or is that something that just comes with time?
It comes with time, but you can be taught it also. You can be taught how to get yourself out, but you have to have the experience to show yourself you can do it also, right? You can't just say I'm like that. You know, I see the philosophy that a lot of people have when it comes to the boxing. If you train boxing and all that stuff, you know, they tell their boxers nobody can beat you. Don't ever say anybody can beat you, period, point blank. And start believing that. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you have to work things out through your head before it actually happens to know or to feel comfortable in a situation and get the confidence up.
Yeah. So last question for anybody that is currently in security that wants to become a police officer, what are the 2 things that they should focus on?
So one of the things that really that is a red flag for me when it comes to somebody wanting to getting out of security into law enforcement is when they say I have experience. Because you don't, right? Security is a totally different animal than law enforcement. Totally different animal, right? So it scares police departments when security officers say I have experience in law enforcement to a point, because we know you don't, right? We know that it's not actual law enforcement experience. Yeah, you might have experience with carrying a gun and talking to people, but you can have experience talking to people just working at a grocery store, and you can have experience carrying a gun by getting your CCWs or getting your gun permit or something like that, right? So law enforcement is just a totally different animal. If somebody is wanting to get into law enforcement out of security, you have to have an open mind to tell yourself you are brand new in this, you don't know anything, and you're about to learn a whole new atmosphere. And I'm saying this coming from security too, because I was that same person. I was in law enforcement. I mean, I was in security. I worked at high crime, you know, nightclubs, fights, doing all this stuff. But it's not the same when you get in law enforcement. It is nowhere near the same. And I just, you know, if anybody's wanting to do that, you just can't have that mentality that you've already got the experience you need to be the police, because you don't.
What do you think it is that's the biggest difference? Is it that you're working in an industry where you're tasked with potentially depriving people of their freedom? So like it's a completely different animal. Like, what do you think it is that makes that, you know, that difference that people are unaware of?
Well, the mindset of a law enforcement officer has to be different from a security officer, because anything that a person does in front of you could potentially take their freedom, right? For a security officer, anything they do in front of you needs to be something connected to the property that you're protecting, right? So it's different. It's totally different when it comes to answering 911, talking on the radio, driving that car at the blue lights and siren. Like it's just the whole atmosphere of it. Security is focused on one thing, right? And that is whatever that contract calls for. Law enforcement is focused on whatever those general statutes and laws say they can't do, that person can do, right? So it's just a totally different mindset and atmosphere when you're in the two positions.
Yeah.
And please don't think I'm trying to talk down on security, because that's not what I'm doing. It's just the fact that, you know, you wearing a uniform with a badge on it does not equate as being law enforcement.
Yeah, it's nursing, right, and doctoral. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like The nurse has a very specific job and they have a needed job, but the nurse is not a doctor. She's not going to be cracking open ribs and, and working on your heart,
Right.
no matter how good of a nurse she is. She has a job and she has a lane. And what's crazy, and this goes back to the whole conversation of the niche. I have found that I am comfortable in this niche, and I like it. I like where I'm at, what I'm doing, the people that I work with, the people that I service. Not to say that I would never get into policing. I'm getting a little bit older now, but I think it's important to know where your strengths are. And in the industry that I'm at, the location that I'm at, the type of places that we service, I say this with 100% no hesitation. They need people with my outlook and mindset. That's not run-of-the-mill security guard, because what we're being asked to do is so much more complex than what we should be doing.
Right.
And people who don't understand that and don't appreciate the people that don't appreciate how sensitive that dynamic is,
Right.
are going to put lives and jobs in jeopardy.
Right. Yep. You're totally right. So when it comes down to it, like I know how a lot of security officers feel, man, because like I said, I was there. I worked a apartment complex where the apartment would call the security line before they called 911. So you were answering domestic violence calls all the time, different calls the same kind of calls you get in law enforcement.
Yeah.
But it's still different because you can't determine if that person goes to jail or not.
Right.
You're not investigating if, you know what I'm saying? Like that.
Yeah.
So it's just a different thing you do. Now, I would say that hiring a security officer, I would hire a security officer before I would hire a civilian.
Yeah.
Because you have had that rig on. You have worn a vest. You've worn that, that badge, and you've worn that badge with some kind of pride in it to say that you're some kind of authority to that area, right?
Yeah.
So yes, there is a connection to it, but it's just two totally different jobs.
If people are on the fence about getting into law enforcement because of, the political outlook of it, or maybe how people view police officers now, it's probably, I would say, more derogatory now than it's ever been, how people view police across the board.
Actually, it's not.
You don't think so?
No, it's not.
What are your thoughts on that?
The problem is that the ones that have so much negative to say about law enforcement, they're just so loud, and the ones that support are just so quiet, right? So, man, every week, probably out of the 5 days I work, I probably have to pay for my lunch once. Every other time somebody's paying for my lunch. They're bringing food to the department. They're dropping off cards. And I'm talking about just like in the middle of the year where there are no holidays or anything. They're saying thank you and things of that sort. You don't find nearly as many people that do not like law enforcement than you do. Now, when it comes to politics, we don't have those problems down here in North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
You might have them up there, but shoot, I can swear, I think wasn't it Portland where they defunded the law enforcement or something like that?
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna tell you right now, our politicians on both sides was like, we are not gonna be like those people.
Like, y'all have lost your mind. And what you said? You said it's like the vocal minority, and that's what we have in Portland. The vocal minority, the people that are, the least committed to the city, the people that are least committed to pushing forward any positive aspect of Portland. Those are the people that make the most noise and get the most attention. They're the people that get their policies pushed through. And, it's crazy to think. And I think that that's starting to change. You're starting to see people here where it's just gotten so bad and people are like, all right, we got to do something. I don't know what it's going to be, but it ain't going to be what it's been. So that's a little bit,
this is why I say, touching back on the if you want to get in law enforcement, I think now, especially in my area, North Carolina, an average of 65% of positions open for every department. That's an average in North Carolina. It's 65. It's over 50% low on their employment.
Shoot, I might have to come down there.
I told you, man. If you came to North Carolina, I'm hiring you. I told you that.
Hey, say less. Don't think I won't show up down there.
I've already told you. If you come to North Carolina, I'm running your back. I got to run your background.
Yeah, you got to run the background.
And I'm telling you, you got a job. I'm telling you, there's no age limit, no age restriction. As long as you can pass the BLET and the physical exam, bro, you good.
I got you.
I'm telling you, got a job, man. I told you that.
Well, let's end it there. That's a positive note.